Chapter 5. I learned to really hate dung beetles. Thanks a lot, Sadie. Hand me the mite right when you get to the good part. So, yeah, Sadie left on her birthday trip to London. The world was ending in 4 days. We had a quest to complete. She goes off to party with her friends. Really had her priorities straight, huh? Not that I was bitter or anything. On the bright side, the Brooklyn house was pretty quiet once she left, at least until the three-headed snake showed up. But first, I should probably tell you about my vision. Sadie thought I was hiding something from her at breakfast, right? Well, it was sort of true. Honestly, though, what I saw during the night terrified me so badly I didn't want to talk about it, especially on her birthday. I'd experienced some bizarre stuff since I started learning magic, but this took the Nobel Prize for weird. After our trip to the Brooklyn Museum, I had a tough time getting to sleep. When I finally managed, I awoke in a different body. It wasn't Soul Traveler or a dream. I was Horus the Avenger. I'd shared a body with Horus before. He'd been in my head for almost a week at Christmas, whispering suggestions and otherwise being annoying. During the fight at the Red Pyramid, I'd even experienced a perfect meddling of his thoughts with mine. I'd become what Egyptians called the eye of the god. All of his power at my command, our memories mixing together, human and god working as one. But I'd still been in my own body. This time the things were reversed. I was a guest in Horus's body, standing at the prow of a boat on the magical river that wound through the Duat. My eyesight was as sharp as a falcon's. Through the fog I could see shapes moving in the water, scaly reptilian backs and monstrous fins. I saw ghosts of the dead drifting along either shore. Far above, the cavern ceiling glistened red, as if we were sailing down the throat of a living beast. My arms were bronze and muscular, circled with bands of gold and lapis lazuli. I was dressed for battle in leather armor, a javelin in one hand and a khopesh in the other. I felt strong and powerful. Like, well, a god. "Hello, Carter," said Horus, which felt like talking to myself. "Horus? What's up?" I didn't tell him I was irritated by his intrusion into my sleep. I didn't need to. I was sharing his mind. "I answered your questions," Horus said. "I told you where to find the first scroll. Now you must do something for me. There is something I wish to show you." The boat lurched forward. I grabbed the railing of the navigator's platform. Looking back, I could see the boat was a pharaoh's bark, about 60 feet long and shaped like a massive canoe. In the middle, a tattered pavilion covered an empty dais where a throne might once have sat. A single mast held a square sail that had once been decorated, but was now faded and hanging in shreds. Port and starboard sets of broken oars dangled uselessly. The boat must have been abandoned for centuries. The rigging was covered in cobwebs. The lines were rotten. The planks of the hull groaned and creaked as the boat picked up speed. "It is old, like Ra," Horus said. "Do you really want to put this boat back into service? Let me show you the threat you face." The rudder turned us into the current. Suddenly we were racing downstream. I'd sailed on the river a night before, but this time we seemed to be much deeper in the Duat. The air was colder, the rapids faster. We jumped a cataract and went airborne. When we splashed down again, monsters began attacking. Horrible faces rose up. A sea dragon with feline eyes, a crocodile with porcupine bristles, a serpent with the head of a mummified man. Each time one rose up, I raised my sword and cut it down, or speared it with my javelin to keep it away from the boat. But they just kept coming, changing forms, and I knew that if I hadn't been Horus the Avenger, if I'd just been Carter Kane trying to deal with these horrors, I'd go crazy. Or die, or both. "Every night this was the journey," Horus said. "It was not Ra who fended off the creatures of chaos. We other gods kept him safe. We held back Apophis and his minions." We plunged over another waterfall and crashed headlong into a whirlpool. Somehow we managed not to capsize. The boat spun out of the current and floated toward the shore. The riverbank here was a field of glistening black stones, or so I thought. As we got closer, I realized they were bug shells. Millions and millions of dried-up beetle carapaces, stretching into the gloom as far as I could see. A few living scarabs moved sluggishly along the empty shells, so it seemed like the whole landscape was crawling. I'm not even going to try to describe the smell of several million dead dung beetles. "The Serpent's Prison," Horus said. I scanned the darkness for a jail cell. Chains, a pit of something. All I saw was an endless expanse of dead beetles. "Where?" I asked. "I'm showing you this place in a way you can understand," Horus said. "If you were here in person, you would burn to ashes. If you saw this place as it really is, your limited mortal senses would melt." "Great," I muttered. "I just love having my senses melted." The boat scraped against the shore, stirring up a few live scarabs. The whole beach seemed to squirm and writhe. "Once all these scarabs were alive," Horus said. "The symbol of Ra's daily rebirth, holding back the enemy. Now only a few remain. The serpent slowly devours his way out." "Wait," I said. "You mean—" In front of me the shoreline swelled as something underneath pushed upward, a vast shape straining to break free. I gripped my sword and javelin. But even with all the strength and courage of Horus, I found myself trembling. Red light glowed beneath the scarab shells. They crackled and shifted as if the thing below surged toward the surface. Through the thinning layer of dead bugs, a 10-foot-wide red circle stared up at me. A serpent's eye, full of hatred and hunger. Even in my godly form, I felt the power of chaos washing over me like lethal radiation, cooking me from the inside out, eating into my soul. And I believed what Horus had said. If I were here in the flesh, I'd be burned to ashes. It's breaking free. My throat started closing up with panic. Horus, it's getting out. Yes, he said. Soon. Horus guided my arm. I raised my spear and thrust it in the serpent's eye. Apophis howled with rage. The riverbank trembled. Then Apophis sank beneath the dead scarab shells. But the red glow faded. But not today, Horus said. On the equinox, the bonds will weaken enough for the serpent to break free at last. Become my avatar again, Carter. Help me lead the gods into battle. Together we may be able to stop the rise of Apophis. But if you awaken Ra and he takes back the throne, will you have the strength to rule? Is this boat in any shape to sail the Duat again? Why did you help me find the scroll then? I asked. If you don't want Ra awakened... It must be your choice, Horus said. I believe in you, Carter Kane. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But many of the other gods do not feel the same. They think our chances would be better with me as their king and general, leading them into battle against the serpent. They see your plan to awaken Ra as foolish and dangerous. It is all I can do to prevent open rebellion. I may not be able to stop them from attacking you and trying to prevent you. Just what we need, I said. More enemies. It does not have to be that way, Horus said. Now you've seen the enemy. Who do you think has the best chance to stand against the Lord of Chaos? Ra or Horus? The boat pushed away from the dark shore. Horus released my bond, my consciousness floated back to the mortal world like a helium balloon. The rest of the night I dreamed about a landscape of dead scarabs, and a red eye glaring from the depths of a weakening prison. If I acted a little shaken up the next morning, now you know why. I spent a lot of time wondering why Horus had shown me that vision. The obvious answer? Horus was now king of the gods. He didn't want Ra coming back to challenge his authority. Gods tend to be selfish. Even when they're helpful, they always have their own motives. That's why you have to be careful about trusting them. On the other hand, Horus had a point. Ra had been old 5,000 years ago. No one knew what kind of shape he was in now. Even if we managed to wake him, there was no guarantee he'd help. If he looked as bad as his boat, I didn't see how Ra could defeat Apophis. Horus had asked me who stood the best chance against the Lord of Chaos. Scary truth? When I searched my heart, the answer was none of us. Not the gods, not the magicians, not even all of us working together. Horus wanted to be the king and lead the gods in a battle, but this enemy was more powerful than anything he'd ever faced. Apophis was as ancient as the universe, and he only feared one enemy. Ra. Bringing back Ra might not work, but my instincts told me it was our only shot. And frankly, the fact that everyone kept telling me it was a bad idea, Bast, Horus, even Sadie, made me more certain it was the right thing to do. I'm kind of stubborn that way. The right choice is hardly ever the easy choice, my dad had often told me. Dad had defied the entire House of Life. He'd sacrificed his own life to unleash the gods because he was sure it was the only way to save the world. Now it was time for me to make the difficult choice. Fast forward past breakfast and my argument with Sadie. After she jumped through the portal, I stayed on the roof with no company but my new friend, the psychotic Griffin. He screamed, "Freak!" so much that I just had to call him Freak. Plus, it kind of fit his personality. I'd expected him to disappear overnight, to either fly away or return to the Duat, but he seemed happy in his new roost. I'd feathered it with a stack of morning newspapers, all of them featuring headlines about the bizarre sewer gas eruption that had swept through Brooklyn the night before. According to the reports, the gas had ignited ghostly fires across the borough, caused extensive damage at the museum, and overwhelmed some people with nausea, dizziness, and even hallucinations of rhinoceros-sized hummingbirds. Stupid sewer gas? I was tossing Freak more roasted turkeys. Geez, he had an appetite. When Bast appeared next to me. "Normally, I enjoy birds," she said. "But that thing is disturbing." "Freak!" said Freak. He and Bast regarded each other as if each was wondering what the other would taste like for lunch. Bast sniffed. "You're not going to keep it, are you?" "Well, he's not tied up or anything," I said. "He could leave if he wanted to. I think he likes it here." "Wonderful," Bast muttered. "One more thing that might kill you while I'm gone." Personally, I thought Freak and I were getting along pretty well, but I figured nothing I said would reassure Bast. She was dressed for travel. Over her usual leopard skin bodysuit, she wore a long black coat embroidered with protective hieroglyphs. When she moved, the fabric shimmered, making her fade in and out of sight. "Be careful," I told her. She smiled. "I'm a cat, Carter. I can look after myself. I'm more worried about you and Sadie while I'm gone. If your vision is accurate and Apophis's prison is close to breaking, well, I'll be back as soon as I can." There wasn't much I could say to that. If my vision was accurate, we were all in deep trouble. "I may be out of touch for a couple of days," she continued. My friend should get here before you and Sadie leave on your quest tomorrow. He'll make sure you two stay alive. Well, can't you at least tell me his name? Bass gave me a little look that was either amused or nervous. Possibly both. He's, hard to explain. I better let him introduce himself. With that, Bass kissed me on the forehead. Take care, my kid. I was too stunned to respond. I thought of Bass as Sadie's protector. I was just kind of an add-on, but her voice held such affection I probably blushed. She ran to the edge of the roof and jumped. I wasn't worried about her, though. I was pretty sure she'd land on her feet. I wanted to keep things as normal as possible for the trainees, so I led my usual morning class. I called it Magic Problem Solving 101. The trainees called it Whatever Works. I gave the trainees a problem. They could solve it any way they wanted. As soon as they succeeded, they could go. I guess this wasn't much like real school, where you have to stay until the end of the day, even if you're just doing busy work. But I'd never been to a real school. All those years of homeschooling with my dad, I'd learned at my own pace. When I finished my assignments to my dad's satisfaction, the school day was over. The system worked for me, and the trainees seemed to like it too. I also thought Zia Rashid would approve. First time Sadie and I trained with Zia, she told us that magic couldn't be learned from classrooms and textbooks. You had to learn by doing. So for Magic Problem Solving 101, we headed to the training room and blew stuff up. Today I had 4 students. The rest of the trainees would be off researching their own passive magic, practicing enchantments or doing regular schoolwork under the supervision of our college-age initiates. As our main adult chaperone, while Amos was gone, Bass had insisted we keep everyone up to speed on the regular subjects, like math and reading, although she did sometimes add her own elective courses, such as advanced cat grooming or napping. There's a waiting list to get into napping. Anyway, the training room took up most of the second floor. It was about the size of a basketball court, which is what we used it for in the evenings. It had a hardwood floor, god statues lining the walls, and a vaulted ceiling with pictures of ancient Egyptians, which rocked sideways walks as they always do. On the baseline walls, we'd stuck falcon-headed statues of Ra perpendicular to the floor, 10 feet up, and hollowed out their sundisk crowns so we could use them as basketball hoops. Probably blasphemous, but hey, if Ra didn't have a sense of humor, that was his problem. Walt was waiting for me, along with Julian, Felix, and Alyssa. Jazz almost always showed up for these sessions, but of course, Jazz was still in a coma. And that was a problem none of us knew how to solve. I attempted to put on my confident teacher face. Okay, guys, today we'll try some combat simulations. We'll start simple. I pulled 4 Shapti figurines from my bag and placed them in different corners of the room. I stationed 1 trainee in front of each. Then I spoke a command word. The 4 statuettes grew into a full-size Egyptian warrior, armed with swords and shields. They weren't super realistic. Their skin looked like glazed ceramic, and they moved slower than real humans, but they can't be good enough for starters. Felix? I called. No penguins. Oh, come on! Felix believed that the answer to every problem involved penguins, but it wasn't fair to the birds, and I was getting tired of teleporting them back home. Somewhere in Antarctica, a whole flock of Magellanic penguins was undergoing psychotherapy. Begin, I yelled, and the Shapti attacked. Julian, a big 7th grader who'd already decided on the path of Horus, went straight into battle. He hadn't quite mastered summoning a combat avatar, but he encased his fist in golden energy like a wrecking ball, and punched the Shapti. It flew backward into a wall, cracking to pieces. 1 down. Alyssa had been studying the path of Geb, the Earth God. Nobody at Brooklyn House was an expert in earth magic, but Alyssa rarely needed help. She'd grown up in a family of potters in North Carolina, and had been working with clay since she was a little girl. She dodged the Shapti's clumsy swing and touched it on the back. A hieroglyph glowed against its clay armor. Nothing seemed to happen to the warrior, but when it turned to strike, Alyssa just stood there. I was about to yell at her to duck, but the Shapti missed her completely. Its blade hit the floor, and the warrior stumbled. It attacked again, swinging 6 times, but its blade never got close to Alyssa. Finally, the warrior turned in confusion and staggered to the corner of the room, where it banged its head against the wall and shuddered to a stop. Alyssa grinned at me. Saper, she explained. Hieroglyph for miss. Nice one, I said. Meanwhile, Felix found a non-penguin solution. I had no idea what type of magic he might eventually specialize in, but today he went for simple and violent. He grabbed a basketball from the bench, waited for the Shapti to take a step, then bounced the ball off his head. His timing was perfect. The Shapti lost its balance and fell over. Its sword came cracking off. Felix walked over and stomped on the Shapti until it broke to pieces. He looked at me with satisfaction. You didn't say we had to use magic. Fair enough. I made a mental note to never play basketball with Felix. Walt was the most interesting to watch. He was a saw, a charm maker, so he tended to fight with whatever magic items he had on hand. I never knew what he was going to do. As for his path, Walt hadn't decided which god's magic to study. He was a good researcher like Thoth, the god of knowledge. He could use scrolls and potions almost as well as Sadie, so he could have chosen the path of Isis. He might have even chosen Osiris, because Walt was a natural at bringing inanimate things to life. Today he was taking his time, fingering his amulets and considering his options. As the Shapti approached, Walt retreated. If Walt had a weakness, it was his cautiousness. He liked to think a long time before he acted. In other words, he was Sadie's exact opposite. Don't punch me, Sadie, it's true. Come on, Walt, Julian called. Kill it already. You've got this, Alyssa said. Walt reached for one of his rings. Then he stepped backward and stumbled over the shards of Felix's broken shafty. I shouted, Look out! But Walt slipped and fell hard. His shafty opponent rushed forward, slashing down with its sword. I raced to help, but I was too far away. Walt's hand was already rising instinctively to block the strike. The enchanted ceramic blade was almost as sharp as real metal. It should have hurt Walt pretty badly, but he grabbed it, and the shafty froze. Under Walt's fingers, the blade turned gray and became webbed with cracks. The gray spread like frost over the entire warrior, and the shafty crumbled to a pile of dust. Walt looked stunned. He opened his hand, which was perfectly fine. That was cool, Felix said. What amulet was that? Walt gave me a nervous glance, and I knew the answer. It wasn't an amulet. Walt had no idea how he'd done it. That would have been enough excitement for one day, seriously, but the weirdness was just beginning. Before either of us could say anything, the floor shook. I thought maybe Walt's magic was spreading into the building, which wouldn't have been good. Or maybe someone below us was experimenting with exploding donkey curses again. Alyssa yelped. Guys? She pointed to the statue of Rod jutting out from the wall, 10 feet above us. Our godly basketball hoop was crumbling. At first I wasn't sure what I was seeing. The raw statue wasn't turning to dust like the shafty. It was breaking apart, falling to the floor in pieces. Then my stomach clenched. The pieces weren't stone. The statue was turning into scarab shells. The last of the statue crumbled away, and the pile of dung beetle husks began to move. 3 serpent heads rose from the center. I don't mind telling you, I panicked. I thought my vision of Apophis was coming true right then and there. I stumbled back so quickly I ran into Alyssa. The only reason I didn't bolt from the room was because 4 trainees were looking at me for reassurance. It can't be Apophis, I told myself. The snakes emerged, and I realized they weren't 3 different animals. It was one massive cobra with 3 heads. Even weirder, it had unfurled a pair of hawk-like wings. The thing's trunk was as thick as my leg. It stood as tall as me, but it wasn't nearly big enough to be Apophis. Its eyes weren't glowing red. They were regular, creepy green snake eyes. Still, with all 3 heads staring right at me, I can't say I relaxed. Carter? Felix asked uneasily. Is this part of the lesson? The serpent hissed in 3-part harmony. Its voice seemed to speak inside my head, and it sounded exactly like the baa in the Brooklyn Museum. Your last warning, Carter Kane, it said. Give me the scroll. My heart skipped a beat. The scroll. Sadie had given it to me after breakfast. Stupid me, I should have locked it up, put it in one of our secure cubbyholes in the library, but it was still in the bag on my shoulder. What are you? I asked the snake. Kata? Julian drew his sword. Do we attack? My trainees gave no indication that they heard either snake or me speak. Alyssa raised her hands like she was getting ready to catch a dodgeball. Walt positioned himself between the snake and Felix leaned sideways to see around him. Give it to me! The serpent coiled to strike, crushing dead beetle shells under its body. Its wings spread so wide they could have wrapped around us all. Give up your quest, or I will destroy the girl you seek, just as I destroyed her village. I tried to draw my sword, but my arms wouldn't move. I felt paralyzed, as if those 3 sets of eyes had put me into a trance. Her village, I thought. Zia's village. Snakes can't laugh, but this thing's hiss sounded amused. You'll have to make a choice, Carter Kane. The girl or the god. Abandon your foolish quest, or soon you'll be just another dry husk like raw scarabs. My anger saved me. I shook off the paralysis and yelled, Kill it! Just as the serpent opened its mouths, blasting out 3 columns of flames. I raised a green shield of magic to deflect the fire. Julian chucked his sword like a throwing axe. Alyssa gestured with her hand, and the 3 stone statues leapt off their pedestals, flying at the serpent. Walt fired a bolt of gray light from his wand, and Felix took off his left shoe and lobbed it at the monster. Right about then, it sucked to be the serpent. Julian's sword sliced off one of its heads. Felix's shoe bounced off another. The blast from Walt's wand turned the third to dust. Then Alyssa's statue slammed into it, smashing the monster under a ton of stone. What was left of the serpent's body dissolved into sand. The room was suddenly quiet. My 4 trainees looked at me. I reached down and picked up one of the scarab shells. Carter, that was part of the lesson, right? Felix asked. Tell me that was part of the lesson. I thought about the serpent's voice. The same voice as the baas in the Brooklyn Museum. I realized why it sounded so familiar. I'd heard it before during the battle at the Red Pyramid. Carter? Felix looked like he was about to cry. He was such a troublemaker, I sometimes forgot he was only 9 years old. Yes, it's just a test, I lied. I looked at Walt and we came to a silent agreement. We need to talk about this later. But first I had someone else to question. Class dismissed. I ran to find Amos.